Many in the hip-hop and nightlife communities are mourning the death of 33-year-old Ariela Mejía-Polanco. She was shot dead Sunday morning while driving alone in her car on the Cross County Parkway in Mount Vernon. Tony Aiello has more now on the murder of this social media influencer.
The vibrant colors of a memorial display outside Opus Lounge in Inwood, where 33-year-old Ariela Mejía-Polanco worked as a hostess. She was also an influencer with 500,000 followers on Instagram, some stopping by to pay respects.
Imagine waking up one morning with nothing but a dream. A dream so big, it feels larger than the city skyline itself. For Ariela Mejía-Paleno, that dream began far away from the flashing lights of Manhattan. She was born in the Dominican Republic, in a world that felt small compared to the one she longed for. But even as a child, Ariela's family and close friends said there was something different about her. She carried herself with a certain glow, a spark that made you believe she was destined for something greater. From the start, life was not easy. Like so many immigrants, Ariela and her family looked to the United States for opportunity. Her move to New York wasn't just about chasing ambition. It was about survival, about carving out a life where she could provide stability not only for herself, but for the family she held close to her heart. She wasn't simply another face in the crowd. She was a young woman determined to turn every struggle into a stepping stone. Her loved ones remember her as warm, magnetic, the kind of person who made a room feel lighter the moment she walked in. And yet, beneath the laughter and the energy, Ariela carried responsibilities that would shape everything she did in the years to come. She was not just a woman chasing success, she was a mother. She had 2 children who meant the world to her, and no matter how bright her online persona became, at the end of the day, it always circled back to them. That's the part many of her followers never got to see. Online, Ariela was glamorous, bold, always camera-ready. But at home, she was a mother planning meals, helping with schoolwork, saving for her daughter's quinceañera, and making sure her son felt just as loved. To outsiders, she was a rising star. To her family, she was their anchor. But here's the haunting truth. When your life is divided between the spotlight and the shadows, danger doesn't always come from where you expect it. Ariela's journey would soon intertwine with powerful people, dangerous circles, and secrets that would follow her for years. Her story wasn't just about fame. It was about sacrifice, about love, and about the high price some people pay when their dreams shine too brightly. Because before Ariela became the glamorous nightlife influencer 500,000 people followed online, she was simply a young woman chasing stability for herself, for her children, and for the life she believed she could create in America. What she didn't know was that the very path she chose, the nightlife scene, the world of fame and attention, would one day lead her directly into the crosshairs of people who never forgave, never forgot, and always watched from the shadows. And before we begin unraveling this story, we'd like to ask for your support. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and your support helps us keep bringing you real stories like this one. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Okay, let's continue the story. In New York, Ariela's charm became her greatest weapon. It opened doors, earned her friends in high places, and introduced her to a world she had only seen on television. But with every new connection, with every spotlight shining down on her, the line between opportunity and danger began to blur. New York City, the place where dreams are made and sometimes destroyed. For Ariela Mejía-Paleno, this city was more than just a home. It was her stage. When she first arrived, Ariela wasn't the glamorous influencer her followers came to adore. She was a bartender, working long hours at a nightclub called Icon New York in Inwood. For many, it was just a job, a way to survive in one of the most expensive cities in the world. But Ariela had something that made her stand out: her energy. She wasn't just pouring drinks, she was creating moments. Patrons remembered her smile, her laughter, the way she treated everyone like they mattered. In an industry built on appearances, she had something far more powerful: authenticity. It didn't take long before Ariela's presence grew beyond the bar. She became a hostess at Harlem's Opus Lounge, and once again, Her charisma transformed ordinary nights into unforgettable experiences. People came not just for the music or the drinks, but because they knew Ariela would be there. She became the kind of person who could shift the entire mood of a room. And then came social media. In 2018, she launched her Instagram account, and suddenly, Ariela's influence stretched far beyond New York City. With bold fashion choices, playful dance videos, and glimpses into New York's exclusive nightlife, her following exploded. By 2025, she had over 500,000 followers on Instagram and more than 100,000 on TikTok. Her life became a highlight reel of designer outfits, luxury cars, and VIP access to the hottest clubs. But here's the catch. What she showed the world wasn't the whole story. Behind the filters and perfectly framed videos, Ariela was still hustling. She was editing her own content late into the night, planning outfits, building her brand from the ground up. And while her followers saw champagne and bright lights, her reality was often quieter. Sitting in her Manhattan apartment, surrounded by notes and ideas, trying to figure out how to keep growing without losing herself. Her SUV, a sleek, black luxury vehicle, became part of her identity. It wasn't just transportation, it was a symbol of how far she had come. She proudly showed it off in her posts, proof that she had made it in a city where so many others failed. But symbols of success can sometimes be dangerous. What looks like triumph to some looks like a target to others. Still, Ariela never lost sight of why she worked so hard. Her children remained her driving force. Even while building her online empire, she planned every detail of her daughter's upcoming quinceañera, determined to give her the celebration she deserved. Friends would later say that Ariela's love for her kids was what grounded her when the world around her started spinning with fame. But fame is a double-edged sword. The higher you climb, the more visible you become, not just to fans, but to enemies, rivals, and dangerous figures hiding in the shadows. And as Ariela's star continued to rise, she would step into circles that carried both opportunity and deadly consequences. She was no longer just Ariela the bartender or Ariela the influencer. She was Ariela, the name on everyone's lips in New York's nightlife and even the hip-hop world. But the same world that opened its doors to her was the same world that had already destroyed so many others. And soon, Ariela would find herself caught between two lives, the devoted mother and the rising star. A balancing act that would cost her more than she ever imagined. Fame opens doors, but sometimes the doors it opens are the very ones you wish had stayed shut. By the time Ariela's social media following passed the 500,000 mark, she wasn't just part of New York nightlife anymore. She was brushing shoulders with some of the city's most notorious names. Among them was Daniel Hernandez, better known as Tekashi 6ix9ine. To some, he was a hit-making superstar. To others, he was a troublemaker, with enemies lurking in every corner. Their friendship wasn't just casual. Tekashi's tributes after Ariela's death revealed the depth of their bond. He called her the Queen of New York. In Spanish, he referred to her as mi mujer, my wife. Whether romantic or not, their closeness was undeniable. And in the dangerous world Tekashi lived in, closeness had consequences. Because Tekashi carried a past that could not be erased. He had once been tied to one of the most violent gangs in New York City, the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods. At first, they fueled his rise, surrounding him with a dangerous allure that matched his rebellious image. But when the rapper later cooperated with federal authorities, testifying against his former associates, he became branded with a single word that echoed through the hip-hop world: snitch. And it was within this world of gangs, grudges, and betrayal that Ariela herself was pulled in. In 2018, Ariela became an unwilling player in a terrifying ordeal. Members of the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods mistook her for one of Tekashi's girlfriends. Believing they could use her as leverage, they kidnapped her. Imagine the terror of being forced into a vehicle, surrounded by men who lived by a code of violence, knowing your life could end at any moment. For Ariela, those hours must have felt like an eternity. Eventually, she was released. But her ordeal didn't end there. She was faced with a choice: remain silent and hope it never happened again, or stand in court and testify against men who had no hesitation in destroying lives. Ariela chose courage. She stood before federal prosecutors and told her story. Her words, combined with Tekashi's own testimony, helped send dangerous gang members to prison. But choices like that come with a price. The world Ariela lived in, especially the gang world, does not forgive. In their code, cooperating with authorities is the ultimate betrayal. It marks you forever, painting a target on your back. And even though years passed, even though Ariela rebuilt her life, grew her following, and poured herself into her children, the enemies she made that day never forgot her face. She tried to leave that part of her life behind. Online, she posted dance videos, fashion looks, club nights, and family milestones. Her followers saw only the glamour, never suspecting the dark shadow trailing behind her. But that shadow was patient. It waited, and on August 17, 2025, it seemed to finally catch up with her. For years, Ariela believed she had escaped the consequences of that one fateful choice. But the past has a way of resurfacing, sometimes when you least expect it. And on the night she stepped out for what seemed like just another shift at the club, no one could have predicted that she was walking straight toward her final hours. August 16, 2025. To her followers, it was just another Saturday night in New York. Ariela posted videos of herself smiling, laughing, showing off the nightlife energy that had become her signature. She looked radiant, her outfit striking, her confidence unshakable. No one watching her stories that night could have imagined they were seeing the last living images of her. That evening, Ariela arrived at Icon, New York, the Inwood nightclub where she worked and had once bartended her way into the city's nightlife scene. Security footage captured her walking in around 9 p.m. She greeted regulars with hugs, her energy lighting up the room like always. She wasn't just an employee, she was the life of the party, the reason many people came back week after week. Throughout the night, she mixed drinks, danced behind the bar, and filmed clips for her Instagram. At 11:43 p.m., she uploaded a video captioned "Saturday Vibes," a toast with friends, her laughter carrying through the music. At 1:17 a.m., she posted again, a boomerang of her blowing a kiss at the camera, the club's logo glowing behind her. "Love my people," she wrote. Her followers tapped through the clips without thinking twice. To them, it was just another glimpse into the glamorous world she lived in. What they didn't know was that those posts would be her last. By 3:30 a.m., the night was over. Ariela helped close the bar, then walked alone through the employee parking area toward her black luxury SUV. Security cameras showed her stepping inside, shutting the door, and pulling out of the lot. It was an ordinary moment, one she had likely repeated hundreds of times before. But this time, she would never make it home. Somewhere between leaving Icon, New York and dawn breaking over the city, Ariela crossed paths with the person or people who had been waiting for her. Whether she realized it or not, the night that had begun with music, laughter, and flashing lights was about to end in silence, shattered glass, and gunfire. By morning, her 550,000 followers would wake up expecting new content. Instead, they'd be met with headlines that froze their screens in shock.
Very heartbroken. Just coming now is very, knowing that she had her 2 daughters, very sad.
It really hurts, Dominican, very beautiful. Such a thing like this, very, very sad.
The club posted on social media, New York City nightlife has lost an angel. Opus Lounge was closed on Monday night out of respect for the victim. Mejía-Polanco was shot dead Sunday morning while driving alone on the Cross-County Parkway in Mount Vernon. In March on social media, the victim showed off this luxury SUV, which appears to be the same vehicle she was driving Sunday. Her body found in that vehicle not far from 42 Broad, where she rented an apartment. Mejía-Polanco also owned a large home in the northern suburbs. Friends and family there declined comment. The victim was a close friend of the controversial rapper and former gang member known as Tekashi 6ix9ine. He posted on social media his love for the victim, whom he featured in a 2023 music video. Westchester County Police are reviewing the victim's movements, activities, and relationships as they work with the Office of District.
At 7:52 a.m., a police officer in Westchester responded to a call about a disabled vehicle on the Cross-County Parkway. What he found inside Ariela's SUV would send shockwaves across New York City and leave everyone asking the same haunting question. Who wanted her dead? It was just after sunrise on Sunday, August 17, 2025. The cross-county parkway in Westchester County was quiet, the usual weekend traffic beginning to stir. Drivers slowed as they passed a black Mercedes SUV sitting motionless on the shoulder of the road. The hazard lights were still flashing, glass scattered across the asphalt. At first, it looked like a car accident, but what lay inside told a much darker story. At 7:52 a.m., a patrol officer responded to the report of the disabled vehicle. As he approached, the sight was chilling. The driver's side window was shattered, multiple bullet holes punctured the sleek exterior, and inside, slumped forward over the wheel, was Ariela Mejía-Polanco. She was unresponsive, her body riddled with gunshot wounds. There was no doubt about it. This was no accident. This was an execution. Paramedics arrived, but there was nothing they could do. Ariela was pronounced dead at the scene. The car that had once been a proud symbol of her success, a vehicle she had showcased again and again on social media, was now a crime scene. Police quickly closed the highway, collecting shell casings and documenting every detail. The bullet trajectory revealed precision, not randomness. Whoever carried out the shooting had been deliberate, skilled. This wasn't a drive-by. It wasn't mistaken identity. It was targeted. Someone wanted Ariela dead. As investigators combed the area, news of the discovery began to spread. Word traveled fast, first through police channels, then through the press, and finally to Ariela's massive online following. Within hours, her final Instagram posts were flooded with comments, disbelief, heartbreak, and endless questions. How could someone so full of life, someone who had been dancing and smiling just hours earlier, now be gone? By that afternoon, the Westchester County Police Department released a statement. They confirmed that the killing was not random. There was no ongoing threat to the community. The words were clear. Even if carefully chosen, Ariela had been targeted. To her friends, family, and followers, the reality was unbearable. A mother, a daughter, a friend, a star, gone in an instant. For investigators, the task had only just begun. But for the people who loved her, one thought echoed louder than all the rest. Who could have wanted Ariela dead? As New York woke up to the shocking news, the city's nightlife community, the music world, and Ariela's fans worldwide demanded answers. But behind the grief, behind the memorials, there were whispers about her past, her testimony, and the enemies she had made years earlier. And some believed those enemies had finally come calling. News travels fast in New York City. But this news hit like a lightning strike. By late Sunday morning, the headlines were everywhere. Nightlife influencer found dead in SUV. 33-year-old mother of two gunned down on Parkway. Ariela Mejía-Polanco, the woman so many had followed for years, was suddenly gone. Her death wasn't just a crime scene, it was a story that shook her community to its core. Outside of Opus Lounge in Harlem, where Ariela had once worked, candles and flowers began to appear. Printed photos of her smile lined the walls as friends and strangers gathered in silence. Some cried openly, others whispered memories, all of them struggling to make sense of what had happened. One of her closest friends, tears in her eyes, told reporters, she was light, pure light, the kind of person who made everything better just by being there. I can't believe she's gone. Her children, just 13 and 14 years old, were shielded from the cameras. Their lives had been shattered in an instant, their mother ripped away by violence they could not yet understand. Family members asked for privacy, struggling to hold themselves together in the face of unimaginable loss. But grief didn't stop with family. The nightlife community, the very world Ariela had built her career in, was devastated. Icon New York closed its doors for several days in mourning. Their tribute read, "Today we lost our shining star. Your joy, your humility, and the way you treated everyone with care always made you stand out." The story also reached the music industry. Rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine, Ariela's longtime friend, flooded Instagram with tributes. He shared photos, videos, and words of grief that left no doubt about how close the two had been. He called her the Queen of New York, and mi mujer, my wife. His mourning only added fuel to speculation about how deep their connection really was, and whether her ties to him had somehow played a role in her death. Other celebrities, including Cardi B, also posted condolences, amplifying Ariela's story far beyond her own following. Soon, hashtags like Justice for Ariela began trending. Across TikTok, influencers shared tribute videos, replaying her dances, her smiles, her confidence, her moments of joy. But as the tributes poured in, so did the whispers. Those who knew Ariela's past remembered her courage in 2018 when she testified against the 9 Gangsta Bloods. They remembered how she had been kidnapped, mistaken for one of Tekashi's girlfriends, and how her testimony helped put dangerous men behind bars. Now, with her murder appearing so targeted, the question was impossible to ignore. Was this random violence, or was this revenge? The police, meanwhile, kept their investigation quiet. No arrests were made, no suspects publicly named. But behind closed doors, detectives began piecing together Ariela's connections, her movements, and the dangerous ties she could never quite escape. For her followers, the silence was unbearable. They flooded her final Instagram post with comments. "Why would anyone do this? Please, someone tell us the truth. You deserved better." But the truth was still out of reach, and the darker possibility that Ariela had been killed for something that happened years earlier only deepened the fear. Days turned into weeks, and yet the question remained unanswered. Who killed Ariela? The investigation dragged on with more questions than answers, but one thing was certain. The past she had tried to leave behind had never really let her go. And in the shadows of New York City, there were people who still carried grudges strong enough to kill. As the days passed, grief turned into frustration. Vigils had been held, candles burned down to wax, flowers left at her favorite clubs withered away. But the one thing Ariela's family, friends, and 500,000 followers wanted most, answers, remained out of reach. The investigation moved slowly, at least in the public eye. Police confirmed what everyone already suspected. This was no random act of violence. Ariela had been targeted. But targeted by who and why? Behind the scenes, detectives sifted through her past. They looked at her connections to New York's nightlife. They examined her ties to hip-hop figures like Tekashi 6ix9ine. They pulled records from her 2018 kidnapping and testimony against the 9 Gangsta Bloods. Each possibility painted the same picture. Ariela was living at the intersection of glamour and danger. To her followers, she was simply Dominican pretty, the influencer who could light up their feeds with joy. But to those in the shadows, she may have been something else. A witness who once stood against violent men, a reminder of betrayal, a symbol of cooperation with authorities. In gang culture, grudges don't fade, they wait, sometimes for years. And Ariela's testimony had sent people to prison, men who would never forget her face. Detectives also couldn't ignore another detail. Ariela's life was an open book. Every move she made, every outing, every new purchase was documented on Instagram or TikTok. Her SUV, her favorite clubs, her roots home, everything was public. For her followers, it was entertainment. For anyone wanting to harm her, it was a roadmap. The more investigators dug, the more the line between her public life and her private danger blurred. Was her murder connected to her old enemies? Was it linked to her relationship with Tekashi? Or had she become a target simply because her success was too visible? Weeks later, there were still no arrests, no names released, no closure for her family or her children. For them, the silence was unbearable. For her fans, it felt like injustice. And for her enemies, whoever they were, the silence was victory. But one thing was clear. Ariela's murder wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. A reminder of the price that can come with visibility. The higher you rise, the more eyes are on you, and not all of them are kind. Ariela had built a dream life, one that inspired thousands. But in the end, that very dream may have made her vulnerable. Her story forces us to ask, how safe are we when we share our lives with the world? And at what point does visibility stop being power and start being a target? The investigation remains open. Her killers remain in the shadows, and the haunting truth lingers. Sometimes, doing the right thing, standing up for justice, or simply shining too brightly can put a target on your back. Ariela's story is not just about her death. It's about the fragile line between fame and danger, love and betrayal, past and present. And until justice is served, her case will remain one of New York's most chilling, unsolved mysteries.